Yo, what's up guys? So we have from the card database a bunch of new Yu-Gi-Oh rulings and rules for some of the newer Yu-Gi-Oh cards coming out into the game. Now on each one of these on the organization they have the source. If you want to double check and confirm it, you guys can feel free to do so. But I'm just going to give you guys the too long didn't read version of it, and I will also only be applying cards that would realistically see play in the game. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into it. There's a lot more rulings with Crossout Designator because this card will 1000% see some play. A lot of people will definitely be main decking or even side decking this card. So first off, this is the only card that I just really want to go over the effect of fully. Because this is going to be a card that we're going to be talking about a lot in this video because there's a lot of new things that have come out with this card. So it says you declare one card name, you banish one card with that name from your deck, and if you do, until the end of this turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects of the field of cards with the same original name. You can only activate one Crossout Designator per turn. So first off, any confusion from it, it does technically say and effects on the field, and it also says the activated effects, but you can technically halfway negate certain cards, and I know that sounds confusing, but we'll get into that in a second. So the first question was, could I like put the monster face down or move it in another area where it would not be affected? And the answer is no, because it will negate it regardless of where the monster is. Depending on how we have it worded technically in the TCG, sometimes one comma or one semicolon can make a huge difference in the card's actual effects versus other things. But to basically sum it up, if someone activates Crossout Designator, you cannot book a moon or basically move your monster to be unaffected from it, unless of course you're negating Crossout Designator, which is another thing that I want to bring up. You can actually negate Crossout Designator with Crossout Designator by getting rid of another Crossout Designator. So that would be, if you activate a card effect, your opponent activates Crossout Designator, getting rid of one of their copies of whatever card it is in their deck, then you activate your Crossout Designator to stop their Crossout Designator by getting rid of one of your Crossout Designators, if that makes sense. So you can stop Crossout Designator with another copy of it. Now, keep in mind, you can only activate one per turn. We're just mostly talking about your opponents, unless you, I don't know why you want to negate your own effect. This next one up has to do with Appaloosa, the Bow of the Goddess, which is the card that can just like negate multiple times per turn, which is actually really insane. But the most important thing is that this card's original attack becomes the number of materials used for its link summon times 800. Then once per chain, when your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect, you can make this card lose exactly 800 attack, and if you do, negate that activation, and you can only control one of Appaloosa. So basically, in some cards' rulings, when it's question mark attack, anything that would change like the original attack, there's a lot of strange rulings specifically on like the Fortune Ladies, because technically those change as time goes on. But specifically with Appaloosa, the question was with Solitary Sword of Poison, because it does say that it changes the monster's original attack and defense. And because this card actually does change its original attack and defense, and the example that they use is, let's say it had like 3,200 attack, and you negated until you had no more attack. The question was, what would happen if you were to change it with something that would increase its normal original attack? So with this card's effect, you equip it to a monster, and if it battles another monster, the equipped monster's original attack and defense is doubled. So the question was, if this card's attack and defense is reduced, well, technically there's no defense here, but if its attack is reduced, what happens when you would change it from its original attack? If you would change it from its original attack, in this case, you would actually double its original attack and defense. If this card had 3,200 attack when it came out, even if you negated to the point where it had, let's say, 0, even though that's like not technically possible, but let's say for whatever reason, okay, you make it have 0 attack, and then when it actually attacks, because it doubles the original attack, the original attack of it, let's say, is 3,200, it would be 6,400 during that, which, again, that's a little bit something that's different and it's kind of important to know. But yeah, that's Appaloosa. Next up, Mystical Ref Panel. This card, and specifically the Gold Moon coin, which is the new card that people have been cheesing with. So let's go ahead and go over the effect of Gold Moon Coin first. So it says add 2 cards from your hand to your opponent's hand, then draw 2 cards. You can only activate 1 Gold Moon Coin per turn. The question was, could you activate Mystical Ref Panel against someone using a Gold Moon coin, or even technically you activating Gold Moon coin, then activating Mystical Ref Panel to maybe make it so you would get 2 of your opponent's cards, and then you would draw 2 cards. Because sometimes with certain costs of things, they are still paid by the other player with Mystical Ref Panel. But in this case over here, so Mystical Ref Panel says activate only when a spell card that targets one player is activated. The effect of that spell card is applied to the other player instead. Unfortunately, you cannot use that. That would be absolutely amazing. I mean, could you imagine you activating like Gold Moon coin and then your opponent has to give you 2 cards and then you just drop 2? That would be so incredibly good. One example that you can use Mystical Ref Panel, and it's kind of difficult, I would say, on most card text to determine when is it actually targeting a player. You can, however, use it with Cold Feet. That's like the only way you can really apply Cold Feet. So this makes it so you can't activate, set, or use the effects of any spell or trap cards this turn. You can Mystical Ref Panel your own Cold Feet, so you would give it to your opponent, so they would have all of those negative effects. But yeah. Next up, this has to do with Fortune Lady Water, or any card that would actually allow you to draw multiple cards in combination with any of the Fortune Fairy cards, where when you draw it, you would be able to special summon it. If you draw multiple copies of any of the Fortune Fairies, you cannot actually activate multiple of their effects, which is absolutely terrible if they're drawn again at the same time. So this would be a very, very simple combo that people definitely would be using. I'm not sure if Fortune Ladies are ever going to become like really strong, but some of the support is not bad at all. But anyways, the effect really comes down to when this card is special summoned, while you control another face-up Fortune Lady monster, except for itself, you get to draw 2 cards. The question was, with any of the Fortune Fairies, when you draw these cards, you can actually reveal them. Unfortunately, if you draw multiple copies, I mean, technically, if you have multiple copies of the same one, obviously, you can only use each effect of them once per turn, but there's a bunch of these other smaller ones. Basically, if you draw multiples of them, you can't special summon on the rest of them. You can, however, utilize them in dangers very well. We actually covered this in a video, and if you guys would like to see that, I'll have that pinned down below, but it's just showing a lot of, like, the things that you can do with the Fortune Fairies. And then with Dark Doriana, you can stack your deck and basically do some crazy stuff with it. But you can still do that. But again, if you're drawing multiple cards at the same time, you cannot summon them, which is definitely unfortunate for anyone that was interested in playing that. The next one has to do with number 26, the Octo Bypass, the Dimensional Pathway. So what's interesting with this card, we're really looking at it for the second part of its effect, where at the, well actually we should probably read the full thing. But anyways, at the start of the battle phase, you detach a material from this card. During this battle phase, only one monster could attack, and its attack become direct attacks. So the other effect over here is at the end of the damage step, if a monster inflicted battle damage by a direct attack, give control of that attacking monster to the turn player's opponent. So what you, well, what a lot of people were, I guess, thinking that you could do is, for example, you would make this card, maybe use it as material, use it as a stepping stone, eventually make this card go away, and then during your opponent's turn, when they would actually attack you directly, you would bring this card back with anything. We could just use, for example, like Call of the Haunted, because we're just using it for the second effect, because you don't need to detach for that effect. So the idea was you let your opponent attack you directly, then you flip up Exceed Reward, again, it doesn't really matter. And you bring back this card and you'd be like, oh, you attacked that monster directly, give it over to me. And unfortunately, it does not work because it has to be damage that you take while this card is up on the board. So this card, not as good anymore, basically. Next up, before I mentioned with specifically cross out designator, where you'd be able to negate kind of halfway an effect, and you're wondering like how would this actually work. So let's say, for example, you're up against spellbooks, which let's say they activate spellbook power. It doesn't really have to be this specific card, but it's just card effects that would technically kind of apply 2 different effects. One would happen at a later time. So we'll use Spellbook of Power for this example because I think it's a really good one. So anyways, it says target a spellcaster, and until the end phase, it gains 1,000 attack. And then until the end phase, each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can add 1 Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Power per turn. So the question was, let's say they activate Spellbook of Power, and then they add some other card, and let's say you activate Shared Rider, any card where you would maybe draw into something, whether it's like Phantasme, or you happen to draw into Cross Out Designator. The question is, after Spellbook of Power activates, it gains that 1,000 attack, and you're not like chaining to like that, and let's say like they do some other moves, whatever the case may be, and then you decide to cross out designating them when they actually go ahead and move into like their battle phase, because this technically can be activated whenever. But basically, the scenario would be that if you activate cross out designate or targeting spell power after it already activated and resolved that boost of 1000 attack, they would not be able to add the card, add the spellbook spell card from their deck to your hand. However, the 1000 boost would still apply because that already finished off. So that's what I was talking about. We can kind of halfway negate certain cards. There's a lot of more interactions that would negate something like halfway, if that makes sense. But yeah, that technically is something that is important because, again, this is definitely going to be a card that sees some play. But like I said, if you guys want to check out all the sources for these, you guys can feel free to do so. But some of these rulings were quite interesting. So hopefully it helps you guys out and keeps you guys up to date on the latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Rulings, because I know this game can be complicated sometimes. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on that bell so you know when there's new Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules to come out in the game, because it's always good to know your rulings. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.